to the stream. So, I should say video, because this will be going up as a video. I am making this with a heavy heart. We have some transactions that have happened today for a couple of Overwatch League teams. There was another site that they didn't really leak, but they said, yeah, we've been talking to a lot of our sources, and we think that a lot of the moves for Overwatch League teams are going to start going down about now. Now is going to be the time where you see a lot of people released, a lot of people starting to get signed, stuff like that. And sure enough, we have a couple of big things going down today. So first of all, the Boston Uprising and the LA Gladiators are the two teams we have heard from so far. There could obviously be more in the future, but that's all we have for right now. And what did the teams do? Well, they cut players, unfortunately. It's always a topic I don't really like doing because I always feel really bad for the players. Of course, all of these players, they did get a chance to be in Overwatch League for a year, and they could definitely get signed by somebody else at some point, whether it's a Contenders team or a different Overwatch League team. So, first of all, we're going to go Boston Uprising. They have released 3 players. None of them played a whole lot. So, the 3 players, they're Snow. He was a flex support for the team. Kalios, he played a decent amount. But he played some during the beginning, and then towards the beginning of stage 4, he had a pretty good amount of playtime. But then that kind of tapered off as well. So Kalios, he was a flex tank player. And then third was Avast, and he was a main support. So Avast did not play once. Snow, I believe, played once in their very last game of the regular season. I want to say he literally played one time, kind of like IDDQD for the San Fran Shock. So it's interesting. A lot of teams, they've been releasing players in batches of 3. I don't know if that's just a coincidence or if that's kind of the number they want because they want to add 3 new players about. So yeah, Avast, he played for LG Evil in the past. Very good main support, but apparently they liked Kelix a lot more than him because he played all the time. And Avast never even got a chance to go on stage. So we'll see what he decides to do, if he wants to try to continue to make it in Overwatch, or if he's going to turn his pursuits elsewhere. A similar thing for Snow. Like I said, he literally played one time. They have 3 flex supports on the Boston Uprising, and 2 of them are very good. So it made sense that Snow didn't really get to play too much. Again, I hope that in Contenders or for another team that he also gets a shot at some point, because it's got to be rough for these players that sign to an Overwatch League team. You're so excited, and then you don't get to play just at all. And of course, I mean, if the other players on your team are better than you, then there's nothing you can do. I mean, I understand this perfectly well. I've tried out for my collegiate team in bowling, my sport, 3 times, and I still haven't really got to bowl or perform with the team, and it's just because my play wasn't up to the par of the other teammates. So it's a rough thing. Hopefully these 2 can bounce back and find success in whatever path they choose. And then, of course, Kalios, I'd say he's a little different than the other 2 because he played a lot more. He was also effective when he played. It's not like he played badly, so that will definitely work in his favor. The only thing with them was that Note was very good. He was very good on D.Va, and it was a D.Va meta for the majority of the season. So, I mean, what can you do? It gets to a point where there's nothing else you can do, and you just gotta kind of accept it and move on. I think he'll definitely get an offer from another Overwatch League team, but if not, definitely Contenders. It will be one of the 3. So I'm excited to see what he does in the future. So yeah, Boston, they're cutting down their roster. I believe this brings them down to 7. It's either 7 or 8. So whichever one it is, they've really cut down their roster. So that means that they're definitely looking into signing more players. So you got to think they're going to be signing a flex DPS because Mistakes is the only one on their roster, and his play was a little bit under, I guess, what they would probably want. So they're probably looking for somebody that will compete with him, maybe take over his role. They're probably going to want a backup, like a backup tank or two. They're very low on tanks as well. They just have Gamsu and Note now with Kalios gone. So there's definitely some needs for them. Maybe they'll grab a new main support as well. We shall see. But we're just going to have to wait and find out. They'll probably be making some moves soon. Otherwise, they wouldn't, and they probably already have some players that they've targeted. Otherwise, I feel like they wouldn't have made these moves if they didn't think they already have some upgrades already in the wings. So that's about it for Boston. Like I said, I wish all 3 of these players the very best. And we'll see what happens to them for next season. And then my LA Gladiators. It's funny, I actually wore my Gladiator shirt today. And we have some news from them. They have also decided to release 3 players from their contracts, or I should say they. I'm pretty sure that with these players, they had contracts for last year, and then they have options, like they have a team option, which if you know other sports, that's if the team wants to keep the player, they say, yep, we're going to accept their option, and they're going to pay them whatever their contract is, and that player will remain with the team. So I believe that they declined the options for these 3 players, and they are off the roster. And these are iRemix, our starting main tank, Silk Thread, a flex DPS that we picked up from the LA Valiant halfway through the season, and then Asher, a Tracer main that can also play Widow, and McCree, the hit scan DPS, who started the season starting in the rotation and played a lot in the first couple stages, but then towards the end of stage 3 and all of stage 4 he was gone. He didn't play at all, and he was actually removed from the active roster. So I was kind of expecting them to I don't know, I guess cut Asher. I was pretty much expecting that because like I said, he just didn't play towards the end of the year. He is Korean, and he's full Korean speaker, doesn't really speak English. So and they mostly have an English speaking roster, especially with, like I said, the exit of Fissure a couple weeks ago. Asher definitely hit his stride the most when he was playing with Fissure. In stage 1, when he was playing with iRemix, seemed like they were on different pages a lot of the times, and they weren't coordinating their dives really well, which is of course incredibly important in dive meta when you have your Winston and your Tracer. You want them to be on the same page. Take the London Spitfire, for example. They're the number 1 practitioner of this, and obviously worked out very well for them this season. So as soon as I saw Fissure was gone, and I assumed that we'd probably be bringing in, you'd either be sticking with iRemix or going with a English-speaking main tank. I was like, okay, it probably doesn't make sense for Asher to be on the team anymore, so they'll probably cut him. Asher was a player who, like, week to week, he fluctuated a lot. Like, he had some weeks where he looked really, really, really good, like one of the top tracers, and then he had some weeks where it's like, it feels like he's not even in the game, and like his impact is really minimal. So he was a player who I was like raging at the TV some days, and other days I was praising him. So I am sad to see him go, though. One of the original members of that original 7 that the Gladiators assembled before they started their acquisitions, like Void and Fissure, etc. They did not release Void. I was a little surprised. I thought that he might be one of the ones too. It would be Asher and Void would definitely be 1 and 2 for me. And then Silk Thread as well, flex DPS for the team. He played in and out stages 3 and 4, but definitely towards the end of stage 4 he did not play as much. I think they even brought him in for a couple maps during the playoffs, but he never got super consistent playtime. Played a lot of different heroes. He's kind of the same type of player as Hydration is, like hero pool wise. So having both of them on the team doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I mean, that's why I'm sure they chose to part ways with him. Hydration started really playing well in stage 4, especially, and so they're gonna go with him in the future. So I assume that's why they said Silk Thread, we don't want to pick up our option, and hopefully. I could honestly see all 3 of these players being picked up by an Overwatch League team. They've all been proven to be at least competent players, if not above that, in the league. Silk Thread had some games where he performed really well for the Valiant, and he had some games where he performed really well for the Gladiators. So, who knows? Maybe he will find the right fit. I hope he does. I hope Asher and Silk Thread both do. And, of course, I hope the same thing for iRemix. So, iRemix, yeah, he was, of course, our main tank, so mainly Winston, a little bit of Reinhardt when he showed up in the middle of the season. But yeah, iRemix, we picked him up from Kangarna, and he was the starting main tank. He was the only main tank on the roster, and he played all stage 1, obviously before we picked up Fissure. And a lot of people were frustrated in his play. I was frustrated with him sometimes. The main thing with him was he tend to lack aggression. He's more of a defensive main tank, and nowadays with like Fissure, with Gesture, with a lot of the the very good main tanks in the league and the very good Winstons, they are aggressive. They're always like trying to make plays. They're opening up a lot of space to their DPS to really pop off. This was especially important when the Widowmaker meta was in full blast, of course, because if your Winston spaces out the enemy team, that gives your Widowmaker very good sight lines, and they're just gonna, if you have a good Widowmaker, they're gonna pop off. We did see this with Surefour when Fissure arrived to the team, so no more iRemix. This one probably surprised me the most out of all 3 of the players that the Gladiators have decided to release, because he played well. He played in and out a little bit in stage 4. Like Fissure had a game where I think he was sick, and Remix came in and he played well. And he played well during the playoffs. I thought he had a very solid performance, and I was like, okay, I could see the Gladiators going into next season. Like, all right, iRemix, he's grown a lot since the beginning of the season. He's playing a lot better. And I think we can trust him to be our starter. Maybe we bring in another main tank to kind of compete with him, and then we see who's better. But I did not expect them to release him. It's a sad day. I really liked all 3 of these players, and whenever I root for a team, I get attached to the players. It's just a thing I do. It's the same thing when I make my fantasy teams. I don't really like trading my players very often because I get attached. And for the actual sports teams that I root for, whenever some of my favorite players leave, I get super sad. So, like I said, heavy heart I make this video with. But yeah, I wish them the absolute best. The Gladiators released a video talking about, well, they didn't talk about it. They were playing an instrumental of the new Macklemore and a female singer. I forget her name, but a newer song that's been popular this summer. They released that, and they showed videos of the 3 players and them interacting with their teammates and talking about joining the Gladiators and everything like that. So it was super sad. It's a sad day for Gladiator Nation. So I'll be watching for the Uprising as well, and the Shock. They released players earlier in the month, so going to be watching with pretty rapt attention to see what they do, which kind of players they decide to pick up, and to see what happens with these players. Like I said, there's with the Shock, Uprising, and Gladiators. That's now 9 players. We'll see if they decide to retire from the game altogether, if they join a contenders team, if they join another Overwatch League team, if they go to one of the expansion teams. So yeah, it seems like the off season is really starting to ramp up, and we're going to see what a lot of these teams want to do and what direction they're going to go in with their teams in the coming week, I think we're going to see a lot of stuff. I'll be keeping you guys up to date on any of those transactions. And yeah, that's it for this video. Hope you guys have a great couple days, and I'll see you in the next one.